Phillies are hosting the National League's top team. The Arizona Diamondbacks are in town. But believe it or not, Frank Klose, the Phillies are right there behind them. So are you looking at this series as kind of a little early season measuring stick game?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the Diamondbacks, you kind of knew they would be a good team going into the season. They have 15 wins to the Phillies 14. So for all the people that have said, oh, well, the Phillies, beat up on some teams that aren't that strong, like Cincinnati Reds, well, it's very interesting because the Atlanta Braves were doing very, very well. And the Phillies did beat them a little bit, and so were the Pittsburgh Pirates when the Phillies got to them. But having the Diamondbacks coming from the West Coast, I think this will be a decent measuring stick to see kind of if the Phillies are good or if maybe they're just getting a little lucky.
Couple quick moves to talk about before we get into Frank's mailbag. Hobie Milner down, Tommy Hunter up. How do you view Hunter and his role in this bullpen? They signed him to some decent money, so you would think that the Phillies, who are playing pretty well, are going to get better significantly from this move.
Yeah, so the Phillies thought that they were catching him kind of on the upswing. If you remember a couple of years ago, Rich Hill, for example, ended up having a lot of success, and teams snagged him for cheap. So I think the Phillies project him to be pretty good. Now, he's able to get out a lot of lefties, too. So when it came down to it, last week we were kind of wondering, you can't send Victor Arano down. He's pitching so well. You can't send Yaxel Rios down. He's pitching so well. So what do? And the Phillies basically said, well, you know what? Our other guys are getting lefties out anyway, so let's send Milner down, who's struggling a little bit, has a minor league option. And so Hunter, you'll probably see him come in to get some left-handed hitters out as well.
Frank Klose with us. The mailbag's open. Let's throw that open, Frank, and get right to it. John wants to know, what do you think the reason is for the Phillies' early success?
A lot of it is what I was just saying a moment ago, and really it was the pitching. And pretty interestingly, so when these teams match up tonight, the Phillies and Diamondbacks are 1-2 in terms of ERA. Diamondbacks are slightly ahead of the Phillies. They come in at about 2.74, Phillies 3.01. And in terms of whip, walks and hits per innings pitched, the Phillies are second in the league behind the Diamondbacks and performing very, very, very well. Another really neat stat is that in the last 12 games, Phillies starters have allowed 3 or fewer runs. And that's pretty impressive. Now, the last time the Phillies did that, they had the 4 aces, and you're going back to April into May of 2011. Look at the bullpen. Victor Arano, right? He allowed 1 base runner. Finally, he pitched more than a perfect game's worth of consecutive outs, which is pretty fascinating. Before finally giving up a hit on Sunday. So, Yaxel Rios again. He gave up 1 run back on March 31st, and since then he's not allowed a run. So, the bullpen's been doing very well. The starters are giving them longer outings. They're not allowing many runs, and it seems like even when the starters depart, if they don't have a lead, the Phillies find a way to get it later. So, Nick Pivetta, for example, they've won every game he's pitched so far, which is going to help you win some games if he's giving that consistency. And he is somebody who was kind of the number 5 guy going in. They're getting a lot out of him, and even when they've struggled, I think Ben Lively was the last to give up more than 3 runs. The Phillies found a way to win that game. So, lots of positivity coming from the pitching side of things, and even though the batters really aren't hitting yet, it's very interesting when you consider Aaron Altair is hitting in the 100s, although he went 3 for 3 the other day to win that game, right? So he's kind of on the climb. J.P. Crawford, he's had his moments, but hasn't totally gotten it going yet. And Carlos Santana, he's getting on base a ton. He's just not hitting for high average, but you figure that Carlos Santana is going to make some of that hard contact he's making is going to drop in for hits more often than it is. So there's still some room for the upswing on the bats, but right now it's been all about the pitching. And if you get good pitching, you're going to win some games. And one more thing on that pitching, people are starting to see that, and this is an analytics thing. I know people love to harp on Gabe Kapler for the analytics, but kind of some of the hitting trends were to really work on one's launch angle with the bat. And what the Phillies pitching has been doing is try to counteract that and make it so that the batters can't get hard contact. And the numbers are showing so far that the opponents are not hitting the ball hard against the Phillies. So that leads to obviously a lot of balls in play that don't really go anywhere. And it's really been a real testament to their pitching so far. So they figured out what the latest analytical trends are and are already thinking ahead to how to counter them.
Hey, Frank, real quick, I do want to ask this question because I guess Eichhoff will be getting close to being ready soon. Do you think Pivetta versus Lively, those two guys are kind of competing for that final spot? How do you think that will play out when Eichhoff is, what's he been out, about 4 weeks now? So he's got to be getting somewhat close.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard an update on him just yet, but I think right now Pivetta is the one that would stick around for now. He's just been
Lively to the pen or back to the minors?
That's a great question. I guess a lot would depend on how they're doing. It's funny because every time we think it's all figured out, somebody gets hurt or something along the line. So you never really tell. But I don't know if there's a lot of room in the bullpen right now. I mean, that's. We're going to see Pat Neshek come back soon. I think Drew Hutchison is going to be the one who loses his roster spot there. But there's really not a lot of people in the bullpen that you want to say, get him out of there right now.
True that. All right, Don has an interesting question. He wants to know who the odd man out will be if the Phillies are to target a big-time free agent this offseason. So who on the field now do they need an upgrade over?
I think we saw early on Maikel Franco had some big hits, but he's kind of leveled out already. I think this is all my pure gut. I don't have any inside information, but it just seems like Manny Machado is a better fit for the Phillies than Bryce Harper. I think given all the personal relationships Machado has with the former Baltimore Orioles front office that the Phillies have, the fact that he's just up the road, the fact that the Phillies can sign him, write him a check for whatever he wants, and it's not going to be a problem because they really don't have any financial constrictions. I see Manny Machado being a really good fit for the Phillies, for the lineup, and I think he's probably going to end up at third base. Now, this year, Machado is playing some shortstop at his own request because he wanted to sort of beef up his signability. But, J.P. Crawford, I know he's not hitting well yet, but I think that there's been a more extended period of time to see Maikel Franco, and you might draw the conclusion more that he is not going to be as impact a bat as some might have hoped early on. He might remain a nice player. He's probably a type of guy that the Phillies would get interest on if they were looking to trade him. But it seems to me that if you're looking ahead long term, the best spot to fit somebody like Machado might be at third base. And that's not to say, though, I think that the Phillies are going to be engaged with Scott Boras, the super agent who represents Bryce Harper. I think they're going to do their due diligence on every major free agent.
Yeah. Let me ask you this real fast. Baltimore's been awful. They're almost, 12 games out of first already. If they are looking to move him this season and not before free agency, do you think the Phillies make that call?
That's a great question. And, I think we really need to see where the Phillies are in July. I mean, if the Phillies are in striking distance, maybe there is an opportunity there. Now, I don't think it's really hard to say because teams at the trade deadline tend to act more out of desperation and are more likely to give up a lot more than a player's worth just to try to get over that hump if they're really desperate to make the playoffs. I don't think the Phillies have that same desperation this season. Things are looking good, things are on the up and up. But the question is, what do the Phillies have sort of as extra talent to trade? Do they really want to sacrifice a lot of it at the trade deadline? I don't think they have the same sense of urgency. But it could be, a matter of who else is looking at the time and how big the price tag is. I wouldn't rule anything out. I think they wouldn't rule anything out either.
So, Frank, you probably know we're doing a pick your trip for an Eagles game this season, an Eagles road game. Daryl wants to know what would be a good Phillies road trip this season.
And by the way, I'm trying to get to Tampa to see the Eagles there this year. I love going down there, as you all know. But yeah, there's a few games that he's looking to take his son on a trip. First, I have to go Chicago. If you've ever been to Chicago, there's just so much to do, so much to see, lots of great restaurants. And I think the thing that makes Chicago such a fun place to visit is that they have a tremendous public transit system where all the different L lines all kind of come together downtown in what they call the Loop, meaning you can switch trains and get yourself anywhere you want in the city. And the red line goes right up to Wrigley Field, and which means you can stay downtown at what they call the Magnificent Mile, which is a nice stretch of some of the best restaurants right near Navy Pier. And Wrigley Field, I haven't seen it since they've made the changes, but it's a great place to visit. My number. So if I had to make a different category of a new ballpark, I love PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Phillies are going to be there in July, or the week right after July 4th, and you can usually stay somewhere within walking distance. And there's a lot of great food, a lot of great. There's a Rivertown Brewing Company nearby, which is a nice little local brewery there. And you can do a lot on foot, even walking over the Roberto Clemente Bridge, where the rivers all come together. Tremendous place to watch a game. I think it's my favorite new ballpark. And I have to add to this. So we did one old, one new, but you have to mention that the Phillies will be at Fenway Park for 2 games in July, on July 30th and 31st. And Boston, same kind of thing, easy to get around, so much to do. It's funny, a lot of these cities, it's just to go for the food is going to be a great experience. But Boston, there's so much to see, historical sites. I don't know how old Daryl's son is, but depending on school age, he might find a lot of that, important for his history class too. So, but all 3 I would really, really recommend. Now, one thing I want to do personally that I haven't had a chance to do is the Phillies are going from Arizona to San Diego back-to-back with a day off in between. So that means, you fly out to Arizona, you can rent a car, spend the night in Vegas on the way, head down to San Diego, and you can make it a nice long road trip too. So lots of options in this year's schedule. The one disappointing thing is if your son's school age, the Phillies already were in Atlanta twice, and they're not going back until during the next school year either. So that might be a nice ballpark to check out. I hear really, really good things about the new Braves ballpark.
All right, check that out at 973ESPN.com. The Phillies Mailbag with Frank Klose each and every Tuesday here on the Sportsback. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, guys.